His fists weren't clenched, but the damage was already done. Jason Statham stood over a man slumped against a steel pole in the rain. Blood mixed with the runoff beneath them, circling the edge of a broken curb like red ink in dirty water. The man wheezed, not from pain, but from realization. His badge was gone, his belt stripped, the uniform soaked and ripped no longer gave him power. No sirens came, no backup. Across the street a window glowed faintly in a small flower shop. Inside a woman sat alone at the counter, a cut still fresh above her cheek. Her eyes locked on Jason through the glass, not wide in shock, not narrow in vengeance, just silent. Jason didn't speak. He just walked away, steps even, rain on his shoulders, a shadow slipping back into the city. They thought they knew what justice looked like. But they hadn't met Jason Statham. It hadn't started here. It started with flowers and disrespect. Rewind, same city, same night. A small shop squeezed between an old tailor and a closed pizzeria. Light flickered above the glass door. Inside, Nina Statham's hands moved quickly but gently. A bouquet wrapped in soft brown paper sat half-finished on the counter. She worked alone. She always did this time of night. It wasn't just a job. It was her space, a kind one, untouched by the rest of the city's noise, until the door slammed open. The bell broke on impact. A man stepped in wearing a uniform that didn't belong to him. The patches looked official enough, but his posture wasn't. His mouth twisted the second he saw her. His boots left muddy water across the clean tiles. He called her something. Something loaded with mockery. Nina didn't respond. She asked him to leave, voice firm, practiced. He didn't. He walked to the counter, looked at the bouquet, and with one careless hand tore the flowers apart. She didn't flinch. Not yet. She reached for her phone. His hand moved faster. A closed fist hit across the face, fast, trained, controlled enough not to break bone but cruel enough to leave damage. She fell back against the wall, one hand clutching her temple, the other crushed between her side and the tile floor. He told her to remember that feeling. Said it was a warning, then he left, calm, casual, like it was nothing. The shop stayed silent. No sirens came. 4 blocks away, Jason Statham hit the speed bag one last time before removing the tape from his knuckles. His phone buzzed. A number from Nina's neighborhood. No message. Just a call. He ignored it, then another. He answered. The voice on the other end wasn't hers. 5 minutes later he was there. The bouquet lay on the floor, petals soaked in something dark and spreading. Nina sat against the counter, not crying. Never crying, but her face was marked. One side red, swelling. Jason didn't ask what happened. He moved past her, found the broken bell, the cracked camera housing. He knelt, pulled out the backup SD card still blinking from the auxiliary power tucked behind the frame. He plugged it into an old reader back at the gym. A laptop loaded from a decade ago. It whirred like a dying fan, but the screen lit up. Footage rolled, frame by frame. The punch, the exit. Jason paused at mid-hit. Then he changed. No hoodie this time. No disguise. Just black jeans, a jacket, and gloves. His eyes never left the screen as he memorized the man's face. It wasn't a cop. Not a real one. Jason knew that kind of violence. Fast. Intentional. Someone who'd trained overseas. Someone who disappeared, then re-emerged under new colors. He tracked the vehicle first, still parked 2 blocks down. Crooked, still wet, still bold. There was a bar nearby. Jason walked in through the alley. The lighting was low. Music pulsed in lazy loops. Laughter came from one voice, the same voice from the footage. Jason heard it before he saw him. Wet boots. Leaning on a bar stool, holding court, Jason slipped through the hallway to the back. Waited. When the man stood, Jason was already moving. The hallway outside the restrooms narrowed fast. The man turned and met Jason's stare for less than a second. Then Jason moved, one arm crushed against the neck. The other slammed his head into the drywall. A mirror cracked. The man tried to speak. Jason played the footage. Let him see his own punch again in silence. Then Jason struck. An elbow shattered the side of his face. The man dropped. Jason dragged him by the collar, through the rear door into the alley behind the bar. No one followed. No one saw. The rain made sure of that. Jason zip-tied him to a rusted pole outside a shuttered deli 3 blocks from the flower shop. The man came to, coughing. Jason didn't speak. He pressed play on the audio, Nina's voice from earlier in the day. She was thanking a customer, laughing, kind. Then Jason left the phone on the man's chest, walked away. The man screamed into the night. No one came. No one cared. Back at the shop, Nina didn't speak either. She just looked at Jason when he returned. Not surprised, not grateful, just connected like something between them had been repaired without needing words. The bouquet remained broken on the floor, but the silence inside, it was no longer powerless. The man didn't sleep. Not because of pain fades, but because the silence wouldn't stop playing in his head, the way Jason Statham had looked at him. Not with rage, not with vengeance, just something colder, absolute. Like a man who'd done this before and would do it again, without raising his voice or breaking a sweat. That's what broke him. The phone left on his chest had vanished by morning. The zip ties were cut. Someone, maybe him, maybe not, had limped out of that alley around dawn. But the whispers had already started, that a ghost had come back, that someone had taken down a man in uniform and walked away like it was routine. Jason Statham didn't hide. He never did. He returned to the gym, washed the blood from his hands, retaped the bag. Hit it again until his knuckles split through the wrap. Not for anger, for rhythm, for control, for memory. He hadn't seen Nina since the night before. She hadn't called. She didn't need to. The justice had been delivered, but the damage wasn't done with him yet. Jason checked the SD card again. Not for the punch, not for the man's face, for the seconds before. The license plate caught in the corner of the shop's window, a second vehicle. A silver truck, engine running, driver inside. Not part of the scene, but not innocent either. Waiting. He froze the frame. The side view mirror had a dent, the same dent from a convoy wreck he'd seen in Kandahar years ago. Same model, same setup, same driver. Jason's jaw flexed. It wasn't just a rogue fake cop. It was a group, the kind that follows power like a scent. He left the gym before noon, heading across town toward the abandoned train yard where the signal often dropped, a place locals avoided. But not because it was empty, because someone controlled it. The silver truck was there. Parked beneath an old overpass tagged with fake precinct slogans and spray-painted warnings. Two men stood outside it. One lit a cigarette with hands too steady for street life. The other leaned on the hood, checking his watch like he was expecting someone. Jason Statham didn't approach from the front. He came from the far side, silent, moving through crushed gravel and rusted train frames. He watched. The man with the cigarette was the driver. He'd waited outside while Nina got punched, while the fake cop walked out and laughed. They hadn't expected follow-up. Men like them never do. The world usually lets them disappear. But Jason didn't belong to that world. He belonged to the one where memory was a weapon and consequence came without ceremony. Jason reached into his coat, unwrapped a metal baton, compact, black, silent. He moved. The sound it made striking the man's shin was like wood snapping in winter. The man went down hard, mouth wide, but no sound came out yet. Jason stepped over him, grabbed the second one mid-pivot, drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, slammed him against the truck hood. Then he said it, not a speech, not a threat, just the name of the flower shop. The man's pupils dilated. Jason waited. The man broke in seconds. Told him the address. A warehouse front 3 miles east, a fake neighborhood enforcement office that wasn't on any record but still collected dues, still moved product, still made people disappear when they didn't follow community rules. Jason didn't flinch. He just took the keys to the silver truck and drove off. The passenger in the rearview mirror tried to rise. Jason tapped the brakes once hard. He fell back, stayed there. At the warehouse, Jason parked half a block down, walked in broad daylight, no cover, no hesitation. The door wasn't even locked. Inside, an open floor, crates stacked waist-high, a dusty flag hanging lopsided on a back wall. 3 men sat at a plastic table eating takeout like it was just another afternoon. A fourth stood in the corner loading rounds into a clip. Jason entered and shut the door behind him. The lock clicked. The first man laughed, asked if he was lost. Jason stepped forward, pulled a small object from his jacket, tossed it onto the table, the SD card still labeled, still playing. Their eyes flicked to the screen as it lit up. The flower shop, the punch, the angle from above. One of them reached for a weapon. Jason was already moving. He hit the table first, flipped it into the man holding the gun, took down the second with a roundhouse that drove the side of his boot into the man's ribs. The third scrambled, tried to run, but Jason tripped him with a sweep and pinned him with a knee to the spine. The room stank of panic. The final man, the loader, raised his hands, shaking, pleading. Jason walked to him, took the magazine, snapped it in half across his knee. Then leaned in close, said one word, her. The man nodded quickly, pointed toward a steel cabinet in the corner, inside files, photos, videos, a logbook tracking names, locations, descriptions. One tab read, Flower District Soft Targets. Jason took the whole folder. And the camera system hard drive. And the bat the men had resting behind the door. He walked out carrying all three, left them alive, but with wrists zip-tied behind their backs, phones crushed, and a silent monitor still playing Nina's face. That night, Jason brought the files to a man who owed him favors, a real cop, not a clean one but clean enough to hate what he'd just seen. He didn't ask how Jason got them, just took the files, locked the door, and said, "Give me a week." Jason didn't wait. He returned to the shop. Nina had cleaned it. The broken bouquet had been replaced with a new one, same colors, same ribbon. She looked at him when he walked in. This time she was the first to speak. Only one word. "Better." Jason didn't answer. He just nodded once slowly and sat beside her. The rain didn't fall that night, but the silence stayed, and this time it belonged to them. They came quietly, three unmarked cars parked without headlights on the edge of the block. Doors opened one at a time. No sirens, no shouting, just a coordinated movement, slow, surgical. They didn't wear uniforms. They wore confidence. Not because they earned it, but because the city hadn't stopped them before. Inside the flower shop, Nina sat still, wrapping a white rose in tissue. She'd stopped reacting to shadows, but this time her hand tightened slightly around the stem. Something was wrong. She didn't look up, just finished the wrap and folded the end. The door opened. They entered like customers. One stayed by the door. One circled behind the counter. One walked to her and asked if she had a minute. She said nothing. He smiled. Said he was from the department. Said the man who assaulted her wasn't with them anymore. Said they just needed to ask her a few questions. She didn't blink. Then he said Jason's name and smiled again. She turned her head slowly, looked at him fully, told him to get out. His hand landed on the bouquet. He pressed down until the petals crushed. Behind him, the man at the door shifted his stance. The third one reached for his belt. Then the lights cut, not just in the shop, the entire block. All three men turned. The man near the window drew a weapon, too fast, too loud for the moment. His hand trembled. The front door opened again. Jason Statham walked in. No coat, no gloves, just eyes. The man near the door tried to speak. Jason struck him mid-sentence. An open hand drive to the throat, followed by a punch to the ribs that bent him around a table leg. The one by the flowers went for a baton. Jason caught the wrist mid-swing, turned it until the bone cracked, and spun him face-first into the fridge door. Glass shattered. The third drew a pistol, fingers shaking. Jason stepped in close, placed one hand on the barrel and lowered it calmly, slowly, never breaking eye contact, then headbutted him. The shop was silent again. Jason didn't speak to Nina. He just locked the door behind him, then dragged all three bodies to the center of the room. None were unconscious, just broken in different ways. He made them sit up. Nina grabbed a first aid kit from the counter and placed it beside Jason without a word. He didn't use it. He opened it, took out the tape and wrapped their wrists. One of them muttered a name. Jason stopped wrapping. He asked slowly where they were from. The man said nothing. Jason pressed a thumb to a nerve in the shoulder. The man gasped, then talked. They weren't cops. Not anymore. Not even private. A group that used to move people across borders, smuggled control into places where fear had already built the foundation. Now they were cleaning up loose ends. Jason had become one. He asked if they had orders. The man nodded. A kill order. Not for Jason, for Nina. The folder retrieved from the warehouse hadn't just exposed a racket, it had threatened a much bigger one. One that relied on silence from people like her. People who didn't fight back. Until she did. Jason stood up, told them what would happen next. He'd take the names, the locations, the files. They'd leave with broken wrists, blurred vision, and a new fear. If any of them spoke again, Nina would never have to ask for help, because Jason would already be there. They believed him. They didn't cry. But their faces cracked in other ways. Later, Jason drove them himself, one by one, to separate corners of the city. Left them at precinct steps with fake police reports taped to their chests. Anonymous tips would handle the rest. Then he returned. Nina was still in the shop, sweeping glass near the cooler. She didn't ask how it went. She offered him tea. They sat again. Same spot, same silence. But this time it didn't linger like trauma. It settled like peace. Outside, the real police had begun picking up the pieces. The detective Jason had delivered the folder to was now deep in a federal probe. Buildings were being raided, files decrypted, names connected. The operation wasn't dead, but it was burning, and everyone in the city knew how it started. A punch, a man walking into a flower shop. And delivering justice with his fists. Jason didn't need headlines, didn't need revenge. He just needed the balance restored. Weeks later, a new customer walked into the shop, nervous, unsure, holding a small card and an awkward smile. Nina helped him choose lilies. He asked if she was okay from what happened. She said yes. He asked how she got through it. She said she had help. He asked who. She looked past him through the window across the street, where a man in a dark jacket stood leaning on a street lamp, hands in pockets, eyes watching. He was always watching. She smiled, told the man at the counter, just someone who doesn't like noise. The man didn't understand, paid, left. Jason Statham walked away before the conversation ended. That was his style. No victory dance, no finish line, just the next street. The next wrong to be made right, because some people carry pain, but others carry justice, and his hands they never forget.